everyone. The world's largest electoral exercise has begun, and someone who wears multiple hats, from being a psephologist to an economist, and also someone who has been extremely provocative in his predictions of elections, is joining us here. This is the new book which has been written by Dr. Surjit Bhalla along with Abhinav Madhuram, How We Vote. So he's talking about India per se, not the world, because more than 60% of the world is voting. So congratulations on this book. Martin Wolf says that, of course, you're both original and provocative. They are, it's deeply opinionated, but you're also one person, economist, psephologist, who has relied heavily on research and data. You have been making predictions of all elections, and you have got all of it right. So when I started reading this book, Dr. Bhalla, I went to the second last chapter to satisfy my own inquisitiveness about Indian elections. So tell us, how is India voting?
There are 2 points I would like to make as to how India votes. First, it votes on the basis of how much improvement has been in their lives, in the voter's life. So that's the basic premise behind. So it's not caste, it's not gender, it's not any of the various things that people attribute as a determinant of one's voting. It is precisely what Bill Clinton had said in 1992, is the economy stupid? Yes. So and the data, really Indian data as well as international data, but this book is about Indian elections, really substantiates that observation. So look at how the economy is done if you want to get a good bird's eye forecast of how the election is going to turn out.
So this is the book for you. Since you say that it's about individuals and how their lives have changed.
Yes.
That's the phrase that you used. Prime Minister Modi and his government say that 80 crore Indians are getting free ration.
Yeah.
Then how has their lives really improved? And you have also been one of those economists who has done research and has been extensively quoted as saying that a significant percentage of India's population has moved away or risen from their below poverty line.
2 very good questions embedded in that one question. First, what we say is that because of the significant improvement in their lives, that only less than 1% of the people, that's about 14 million people, are really poor by our old definition of poverty. And we then go out of our way to say that, look, we have developed, improved. The lives have improved, the economy has improved, per capita consumption has improved. So we should raise the poverty line so that in some sense, maybe a quarter of the population is considered poor. So poverty is relative now, no longer absolute. And I'll come to your second part. So first, the poor will always be with us, just like the rich will always be with us. So it depends how you define the poor. Who are the poor? And we use the definition, which is the World Bank definition, of $1.9 per capita per person, so per day. And we're suggesting that it should be close to doubled in order for us, because of the improvement in our lives and the economy, we should raise it. Now to your important question about 800 million people getting free rations of food, and you're absolutely right, that doesn't fit with most definitions of that you're poor. Or that if they are getting free rations, they must really be needing the food and they must really be poor. So how are we make up the gap between 14 million, which we think, and maybe perhaps even 100 million by a much larger poverty line, and the fact that 800 million people get free rations? The source of that is the Food Security Act, which was passed in 2013. And indeed, in my last chapter, I point out that we need to revisit the who gets free food. We need to reorient our thinking. A lot of what my conclusions in this book is dunya, we have changed. The economy has changed. Let us proceed with what the economy tells us today, rather than go with whether it's the MSP that was invented or brought into play in the late 70s or the Food Security Act. We need to reorient our welfare expenditures. We need to reorient who gets support by the government. And this was talked about by Mr. Modi in terms of freebies. But I think we need to redo our food security law and come up with a different version than the fact that, the Food Security Law of 2013 said the following: 75% of all rural Indians, the bottom 75%, should get free food. And 50% of all urban Indians should get free food. Now, either you go along with that, which is what Prime Minister Modi has done, and made it effective in terms of, because of fintech, etc., that the transfer of food is really happening without much leakage. So he's doing as good a job as possible. But we as a society, we as a people have to decide who gets the money. And I'm arguing...
So are you of the opinion then that this 80 million should be reassessed? Do they really need it?
Yes. It should be. No. I'm quite convinced that 80 million do not need it. Okay? So I'm saying you determine who, the 800 million, who should get the money and give them more money. So in other words, it's much better that the bottom 200 million get food and get much more.
Than the entire...
Then 800. Why are the rich or the middle class people getting free food?
Okay, Dr. Bhalla, another assessment which has been done recently by CSDS is that job and unemployment are major concerns of people in these elections.
Yeah.
If job and unemployment are major concerns, then are we to believe that there is a case of unemployment, and all those arguments that have been made by you and others in the context of EPFO doesn't really hold?
Yeah. Look, there is not, and this is something that is discussed extensively in the book, there's not a single election that I know of, whether in India or anywhere else in the world, where price rise is not an issue of election, where jobs are not an issue of elections. This happens everywhere, because what the opposition anywhere in the world wants to show is that, listen, the economy is not doing well. So therefore, what are the two things, you can say GDP growth, etc., but that doesn't appeal to the common voter, right? You say, look, you don't have jobs. Now, who's there to prove that you don't have jobs? And I'll come to that in a minute. So therefore, around the world, politicians say, inflation is too high, there are too few jobs. If you now look at the unemployment rate, exactly what you're referring to, of basically people between the ages of 18 to 29, it is much lower. It is about 4 percentage points lower than it was in 2019. So therefore, he should get more votes. So how are you saying that unemployment is a problem? And another point I want to make, Mara, is that throughout in my career, I've said that always look at the delta. The delta is shorthand for change. It's a technical symbol for change. Look at the change. If you look at the change, there are less percentage of people unemployed today than there were in 2019 at the time of the last election.
Okay.
So,
let me take that thought a little forward, because you also say, and in many ways also say that, question the CMIE data and talk about it in the context of women in workforce, and how that is, CMIE says, puts out data which is less than even Iraq and other countries. Then are you of the opinion that the CMIE data is deceptive?
Look, I have written academic articles on this. This is an academic issue. and several other authors have also questioned the CMI data. I'm not the only one. Jean Drèze, for example, was one of the first to question it about 5 years ago. So I think, and there are many articles, debates I've entered into, and I just ask, there is a smell test, okay? You think less women are in the labor force today than in Yemen and in Iraq? Less than 10%? What fraction of your firm here has women? Must be 50%?
Yeah, we have a significant number.
And
In NDTV newsroom.
They're saying national average is 10%. I mean, this is the point I want to make. It's so absurd. So why has it got currency? It has got currency because the opposition loves it. Same point. The CMI data, I think, is one of the most untrustworthy data ever published in the world, at anywhere, at any time.
Okay, so let me come back to elections again. And one of the concerns certainly is if you say that it's about a person's overall life, if it has improved, then jobs, unemployment, they are not issues for you, according to you?
Not according to me.
They are not.
That they have the improvement has been in jobs, the improvement has been in inflation, less inflation. So therefore, there's still inflation, there's still unemployment, but that doesn't conform to the delta rule that you look at the change.
But still, if CSDS is saying that is the dominant issue in this election?
And therefore, I am saying, ask CSDS, was there ever an election where they said the jobs were not an issue? Was there ever an election? You can look at all their forecasts, all their assessments of every election taken place. Jobs is always a problem and inflation is always a problem.
So if that is the case, then the elections would be about sentiments and emotions.
No, about improvement in people's lives. If I have seen my life improve, so when I go to the voting booth, I'm looking at, has my life improved? And has it improved more than it improved in the previous 5 years?
So then, Dr. Bhalla, let's break it down further. According to you, Ram Temple is not an issue?
I don't think it's an issue.
Mr. Modi's own personality as a decisive leader is not an issue?
That can be an issue. I'm just saying the economy is the dominant. I do think leadership is important. Absolutely.
Okay. So let's come to another data which you have put out in this book, in which you talk about swings, in which you have calibrated as 3%, 5%, 7%, plus and minus, if it happens in the case of BJP, pro-sentiment and anti-sentiment. Even in the best case scenario that you give of plus 7%, the BJP is touching only 347, not 370, which the Prime Minister spoke about on the floor of the Parliament.
Yeah. So look, everybody is allowed to have a forecast. My forecast is that based on the evidence available and statistical probabilities, they should get somewhere between 330 and 350 on their own. This forecast is just BJP.
So you are of the opinion, let me reiterate it, what you have said, that the BJP in 2024 elections is bettering its tally of 303 of 2019 and is also going ahead and is likely to be in the range of 330 to 350.
Yes. Most likely, most probable forecast, where, like in a cricket match or something, 70% chance that a team will win. There's a better than 70% chance that it'll be between 330 and 350. Now, it can be a wave election.
It can be.
It can be. Every election has the potential of being a wave election and has the potential of not being a wave election. That we don't know. We can look.
Are there any signs after the first phase?
None. The first phase, very hard. I would never make a forecast based on the first phase, but it's an important question people are thinking about. And what I did is looked at the turnout. And you need to dig deeper into the turnout based on who won last time. So did the turnout increase in the seats that the BJP lost and the seats that the BJP won, and vice versa for the alliance? I haven't done the analysis. But I think you're not going to get much from this first analysis of the turnout. It was just a matter of 2% or so, a decline in turnout. In some states, it went up by 4 or 5 percentage points. Much ado about nothing as far as the first phase is concerned. I wouldn't derive any lessons from it.
Okay, so what is the best case scenario for opposition? Because you also say India, pro sentiment, I mean, if it's plus 7%, they are still not crossing the halfway mark.
Yeah, I think it's an important, what I also discuss in the book is what perhaps went wrong with the alliance. Because it depends on leadership, as we said, and the economy. The economy is not really helping the opposition, much as the CSDS and others would have. Inflation is high and unemployment is high, or whatever. So I'm just looking at the actual evidence, not people's guesswork of what the evidence is. I think the major problem with the alliance is leadership. What you had just asked, doesn't leadership matter? And I said the economy matters the most and the leadership matters second. And both of them are in favor of the BJP and Prime Minister Modi. So if the opposition had selected a leader who could have a mass appeal or even approximating half the appeal that Prime Minister Modi has, then I think it could be a contest. Second, and there is enough discussion in the book as to isn't it unusual, not unusual, but one of the findings from the analysis we did based on the 2019, what the alliance voters got and what they're getting, there are two parties that stand to lose the most from the alliance. After all, it's a combination. Alliance has to be a give and take. Some parties gain more, some parties gain less. So there are two parties that stand to lose the most from the alliance, from the INDIA alliance. Those two parties are JDU and second is Mamta. Now, JDU is already out of the alliance and Mamta is also, for all practical purposes, out of the alliance. Who are the two parties, or which are the two parties that stand to gain the most? Congress and AAP. So their vested interest is to go with the alliance. They got more seats than they should have to contest than they should have.
Okay, so if the Prime Minister says that there will be 400 par, that's not happening, according to you?
No, I'm not. No, I just said the weight of the probability.
Okay.
What I would say is 60-70% is somewhere around 330 to 350.
For the NDA or for the BJP?
BJP.
For the BJP. Okay. Let me go a little deep on that point. So if the BJP has maxed in central India and northern India, so where are these additional 23, 25 or 35 seats coming from? Okay.
This is also an important question. The argument, and that also is discussed well in the book. The argument is, okay, look, they maxed out, then isn't it very likely that they will lose some, let alone gain some? Look at the margins. They had very comfortable margins in North India, 30%, 40%, etc. So they can lose some of the margin, but they're not going to lose the seat. It's very unlikely that they will lose the seat. Second, where are they going to gain in North? Now that's UP, etc. If you look at the state elections, there is room to grow for the BJP in North India by looking at the election results of the states. Yes. As I said, that the weighted average gain in terms of vote share for the BJP in the state elections is about 5%. That's not small. So therefore, they can. Now, what the BJP also understands, more than I do, more than you do, so they understand it very well, they need to make forays outside of North India. And South India is their major target.
Yes.
Karnataka they are pretty much maxed out.
Yes,
as for
25
last time.
seats, yeah.
So it's Tamil Nadu is a big one.
Do you think Tamil
No,
Nadu?
I've been watching as
observer?
as a political nut or whatever you want to call it. I've been following the Tamil Nadu election very, very closely, and both from the opposition side as well as from the PM Modi side. And I think, I wouldn't be surprised if in Tamil Nadu, of all places, they gain somewhere between 5+ seats, the BJP, from 0.
So you're saying Tamil Nadu, there is a possibility of 5 seats?
At least.
5+?
Yes.
5+ in Tamil Nadu, okay.
Kerala maybe 1 or 2.
You're of the opinion that the BJP is opening its account in Kerala?
In Karnataka.
Kerala.
In Kerala, maybe 1. I mean, but that won't make much difference. Maybe 2. It's very hard. My analysis in this book is not really at the ground level. If I were doing it now, I would do the ground level type of analysis and questions, etc. But I think South is where some forays are going to be likely to be made.
What makes you think that there is a possibility of 5+ seats in Tamil Nadu? It's a Dravidian space. The Dravidian parties have been very anti-BJP.
Yeah. And this is where both sides have, the DMK has polarized the election.
Yes.
Around the South, around...
the linguistic identity, about the pride.
So I think, if I were... and the DMK, talk about being maxed out. The DMK is maxed out.
Yes.
Okay.
38.
Yeah. And they have really tried to hurt a lot of the Hindu sentiments. Though I don't believe that religion has much to do in this election. But, these are the issues when you're maxed out. If I am in Tamil Nadu and I'm looking for a reason not to vote for the DMK, this will be as to the kind of noises they have made. So this will come into play. And they have some good leaders, individual leaders.
And they could win their seats. But is it the Modi factor at play in Tamil Nadu, or is it more to do with the candidates that the BJP has fielded?
No, I think, look, you cannot ignore, and we saw in the 2014 election and we saw in the 2019 election, all the forecasts of what the BJP would get turned out to be less than what they got. And all of the delta, all of the extra was because of Modi. Okay? And I think the opposition knows it and the BJP knows it. I mean, he is an exceptional leader who has proved in 6 elections, there's a nice little section.
I saw that
as to, he hasn't lost an election. And the other important thing about this election for Modi, etc., is if he wins, he will equal Nehru's record of 3 elections in a row.
But there is a record that the Prime Minister has set for himself. A number better than what Rajiv Gandhi got in, I think it was
415.
412.
No, but that was 415. And I don't know whether he has said that, but to me it was a most exceptional election. And we know the crash that came from 415 that year to 189 or whatever it was that he got in.
So then in that case, if it's not one of those, so it's not a record-breaking election.
I think in many ways, if he wins the 3rd election, it is a record-breaking election, record-equaling at least. And mind you, around the world, and that's a nice little discussion in the book, for any leader to win 3 elections in a row is like a record-breaking effort.
Okay, so let me come to my last question. What is in it in this election for the opposition or the India bloc?
What can they do in order to improve the forecast?
What have they done?
They haven't done much in order to win. That's my major complaint if I were in the opposition. Look, there's a lot of discussion which we haven't had time to go into as to the kind of games, the false commentary games that the opposition has played with. Oh my God, the Modi promised 20 million jobs a year. You can't find that anywhere. Okay? Or that employment is a big problem. More jobs have been created in the last 5 years, right, than at any other 5-year period in Indian history. Inflation is really down in India compared to what it is in the rest of the world and has been stable. So you tell me GDP growth approaching 8%, and around the world it's recognized that India has done very well. Now, the opposition could have played, not just come up with fake commentary that no, every data that you come up with is wrong. The rest of the world is saying India is doing very well, and here you are, some economists get together and say GDP growth is vastly overstated. I mean, this is not, whether the economists are doing it or the opposition is doing it, it doesn't help their credibility. So I think as an opposition, they should have had, there isn't much they can do other than to be creative. We know that BJP is popular, or the Modi is very, very popular. They could have come up with something that sticks rather than coming up with a number like you mentioned, a CMIE, unemployment is...
Then Dr. Bhalla, if BJP is in the range of 330 to 350, then the opposition is not really improving its tally.
No, it's not.
Congress is going below 2019 number.
That's a very good question, okay? And let me put it just like I gave 70% chance that the BJP will get somewhere between 330 and 350. There is better than even chance that the Congress alone, haath ka chhap, will be less than what they got in 2019. At least that's what the model says. The model says, and model takes into account everything and nothing, if you will. It doesn't look at what's happening. It's just looking at a long historical 70-year time trend. And according to that, the Congress should be getting about 2 percentage points less votes than they got last time. So something like 17.5% or so is what the model is saying. And unless I'm given reasons to think that the model will be wrong, I have to stick with the model.
So 4th of June, your last word, there is going to be history that will be made in India.
That history in the sense of 3 victories in a row, something we've all grown up with, and I was quite alive when Nehru won the 62 election, but most of this population hasn't seen anything close to it. So I think in that sense history, and I think in terms of growth rates, we are already creating, in terms of economic performance, we are already creating history. So I think political history should follow economic history sooner or later.
Dr. Bhalla, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. And for all the viewers, this is the book. It has some very fascinating graphics and data to deep dive into anybody who is looking at understanding these elections. It's data-led and perhaps the best way to understand an Indian voter. So thanks so much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much for having me.